Hello, everybody, and welcome to College Unmazed. We are excited to be starting off a new monthly webinar series to really talk about hot topics that school counselors are facing today, either in working with their students, their parents, even administration, just different items in college and career readiness that are really critical for counselors or program directors to really understand about this space. So very excited to have this month's topic, which is closing the gap, why college knowledge is equity work. So we're going to have a great short conversation, about 30 minutes. So hang out with us. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@collegeunmazed.com, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. So let's introduce ourselves first. So my name is Dr. Amanda Stirk, and I'm the founder of College Unmazed. I have been a college counselor practitioner and higher ed administrator for over about 25 years now. And I was, as a practitioner, what I found in my school was that students really need critical college knowledge to make sure that they go through the process in the best way. And it was really exciting. At one point, I was looking up exactly that. Is there a college knowledge assessment out there? And what does that mean? And then that's when I found Dr. Tim Poynton and Dr. Rich LePan, and they had done an amazing research study and assessment that really resonated with me. So I reached out and said, wow, I love this study that you've done. How can we actually turn this into a full-fledged curriculum that counselors and programs can use throughout the United States? And that's kind of what started it. So that's why I'm excited to have this conversation, because really it was the beginning of everything for the three of us. So great to be here. Tim, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Tim Poynton. My day job is as a counselor educator and researcher at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. Been a counselor educator for 20 years now. It's hard to say, but yeah, happy to work with Amanda and Rich. Rich and I did this study that we're going to talk more about here. Oh, geez, it's coming up on nearly 10 years ago now. So excited to talk about some of the changes and things that we can do for practitioners here with free resources and tools. Rich, please.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Excited to be here and with my two partners, Tim and Amanda. I'm a professor emeritus from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. I've been a proud counselor educator for a good number of years, trained as a psychologist, licensed psychologist, and maybe more importantly for today, I'm a first generation college-going student. As I know Tim is, so this whole idea about kind of college knowledge and a fund of knowledge that all students need and we can't take for granted that they have. Just a quick story: my first most embarrassing moment going to college was being in the college bookstore and standing there and got my books, and then somebody expected me to pay for them, and I was like, I didn't know you had to pay for college books, and so that this is a whole foreign kind of world that we're stepping into. And so, and I think we've got some great things to share for you with you today.
So, so why college? I pulled this up actually this morning to make sure my facts and figures were up to date. This is from the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce. It's a report that they update fairly regularly, forecasting trends in the labor marketplace, essentially. And to cut to the chase a little bit here is essentially in the next few years, by 2031, 71% of all jobs they're projecting are going to require at least some post-secondary education, with a full 55% of jobs requiring a 2-year degree or higher. So while we hear a lot today about, is college really worth it? The answer for most people is yes. And my response is always kind of two-pronged. Is it worth it from a money perspective? Like for the amount of time and energy and money that you put into getting a college education, is it worth it? And the answer to that is generally yes. A different report here from the Georgetown Center found that on average, people who have a bachelor's degree make about $1 million more across their lifetime than people who do not have a bachelor's degree or high school diploma in particular. Sorry. To me, I don't know, I'm not an investment banker or anything like that, but to me, even if you put $200,000 into your college education, and then the return on that investment was $1 million over the next 30 or 40 years, I feel like that's a good return on investment, just finance wise. The other piece that I like to talk about is that having an education just opens up more job possibilities for you. Regardless of what your major is, there are lots of employers who value people who have a college education, the critical thinking, the problem solving skills, and perhaps most importantly, having a college degree means that you know how to learn, which is really important in today's economic and workplace climate, because continuous learning is something that we all need to keep doing, right? So having a degree communicates to employers that you know how to learn. So I think it's valuable just in that sense in and of itself.
I'd like to throw a plug in. I completely support and agree with what Tim is saying. Kind of a little plug for liberal arts education. I was taken recently by the NVIDIA founder and chairman describing artificial intelligence as kind of the revenge of the English major. And I think if you look, liberal arts types of degrees like sociology and philosophy, psychology, I mean, as Tim is saying, learning how to think critically, learning how to be a divergent thinker, creativity. There's a ton of the new jobs that are going to be created that are high wage jobs. What they require is that kind of higher order thinking kinds of skills, precisely the kinds of things that you get in liberal arts training. So while those jobs may not be requiring a 4-year degree, like Tim is saying, you're demonstrating you have those skills and you're developing yourself to be the kind of person that can take full advantage to these marvelous opportunities that are going to be out there.
All right. So I guess what started this research off for us, for me, Rich and I have been doing research on the transition from high school to college now for, since it's been nearly 20 years since we started down that road. And we had done some really good research looking at the transition from high school to college. And what was missing essentially was this piece of discrete kind of actionable college knowledge. Like schools are in the business, essentially, K-12 schools are in the business, and higher education too, of helping students acquire knowledge. And there was essentially, that was missing from our research. Like, what did these students know as they transitioned from high school to college that might help them be successful? And as I looked into it, there were no assessments that were developed back in the, probably around 2015 or so is when we first embarked on this. There were no measures of college knowledge, and the only person I saw talking about college knowledge at that time, there have been people since who have talked about college knowledge, but it's this gentleman, David Conley, who's well known in this area and deserves a lot of credit for putting the phrase college knowledge kind of on the national radar. And his definition in particular of college knowledge includes both kind of the academic knowledge needed. So what's the baseline levels of, English language arts, math, etc., that you need to succeed in college? That's part of Conley's definition and conceptualization of college knowledge. The part that resonates with me most and is most relevant to what we're talking about here today and in school counseling in general is what he referred to as contextual skills and awareness. And then he always put it in parentheses, college knowledge. So this is his definition, right from the book that he published in 2010, pages 40 to 41. I won't read through all of it, but he included in this contextual skills and awareness area things like how to select a proper post-secondary institution, how to complete financial aid form and the FAFSA in particular, how to navigate the post-secondary system, and understanding the process of college admission, tuition costs, what their financial aid systems, things like we refer to in College Unmazed as gift aid and cost of attendance, like real discrete fact-based knowledge. And yet he wrote about this in 2010, and to this date, he did not develop a measure of these things. He actually did develop some ways of assessing other areas of college knowledge in terms of academic content, for example, but lacking was this measure of contextual skills and awareness or college knowledge. So that led to the development of the College Admissions Knowledge Evaluation, or the CAKE. as we like to call it. Rich and I did publish a study on this in the Professional School Counseling Journal. You'll find it if you just Google or go into the archives for Point Ruiz and Lipan. It's in the EBSCC Evidence-Based School Counseling Conference Proceedings issue of the Professional School Counseling Journal back in 2019. And for the study, we operationally defined college knowledge as the discrete and factual knowledge needed to effectively aspire to, plan for, and initially enroll in college. So similar to, but not identical to Conley's contextual skills and awareness definition. Yeah, go ahead, Rich. Sorry,
I didn't mean to interrupt. Just want to give a shout out to the American School Counselors Association for their support and help as we did this study.
And I'll even include here, I am a big dual enrollment practitioner, did it for about a decade, and we wrote your guide to dual enrollment because, as we know, that's one area. 2.5 million students right now are going through a dual enrollment program. Many of your schools probably have similar programs, and this college knowledge is even more essential as early sometimes as 9th and 10th grade. And so while, Tim and Rich really went at it from sort of a 9th through 12th, particularly that first time in college, 12th to freshman person, we are seeing students needing to have this knowledge even earlier within this high school pipeline. And so just really think about that when you think about college knowledge. It's not always just about that transition piece once they leave as a senior, but if you do have a strong dual enrollment program, or you do have, partnerships with your local community college or other state universities or so forth, that you might have to look at your entire program, 9 through 12, to see where do you need to put in this information as you move forward. So just kind of a note, that's an area I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, I'd like to support that too. I mean, I felt for a long time, we're really on the cusp of a dramatic paradigm shift in the business about college and stuff. And dual enrollment's a great example, just the way Amanda was talking about it.
Great. So just to quickly go through, if you want the full nitty-gritty details, you can look in the journal article for this on the CAKE development process. The short version, just to go through this quickly, is we looked at curriculum materials from two particular high schools, a bunch of journal articles, books, websites, our own personal and professional experience and knowledge. I will share, I am a first generation student, and I recently filled out the FAFSA for my daughter. And that's when I first learned that I was actually a Pell Grant recipient. I didn't know that I was a Pell Grant recipient when I was actually a Pell Grant recipient. Like, that's how little I knew when I was going into college. So we do have our own personal and professional knowledge and experience. And then also we sent it out to a panel of experts and reviewers, essentially, which included school counselors, college access professionals, an admissions counselor, and an admissions administrator, an enrollment management administrator, essentially on the higher ed side, who's also involved in college access work. So we really had a robust review to develop this. So we put it through that process, and then got 6 schools to join us in this research study. Again, I won't go into the details, but basically we asked the schools that participated to gather data from 2 different groups of students. The first group of students was graduating high school seniors who had already gotten all the college knowledge that they were going to get from their high school experience. So those high school seniors were administered the survey in April or May of their senior year. So they had already sent in all their college applications, and if they didn't already make their college decisions, they were going to be making them soon. So we also asked them to gather data from the group of students in their school who had not yet been exposed to their formal college-going curriculum, if they had one. And we didn't specify that it was freshmen or sophomores. We just said, let's gather data from students at some point before they had access to your formal college-going curriculum. And so in some schools that was sophomores, in some schools that was freshmen. And we do have a few juniors that are in here as well. So, but largely it was sophomores or freshmen. So as you can see, we had a good diverse sample from these 6 schools, mostly in Massachusetts, but not all in Massachusetts. 58% of the participants were first-generation students, which means, just to be clear, that they were the first in their families to attain a four-year degree. Again, about 54% white, 62% of the participants plan on attending a four-year college, 12% a two-year college. So you might be wondering, like, we do have some people that were in this study that were not planning on attending college. Like, that is true. Our belief, or at least my belief, I won't speak for my colleagues, is that everybody needs to have the baseline college knowledge to make an informed decision about not attending college. Like, everybody should have this baseline knowledge. And again, just using myself as an example, I did not go to college right after high school, but when I did finally choose to go to college, I had no idea how to pay for it. So if I had been, as part of my high school experience, if I had been exposed to some of that college knowledge about how to pay for college, that things might have ended up differently for me. So, so that's, again, everybody deserves to have this baseline level of college knowledge, even if they're not planning on going to college today, essentially. So.
Yeah, and I would add I completely agree. And, we're living in a world, as the stats you were talking about, it's like one thing is certainly true. The jobs of the future require more education, post-high school education. And I would think it's a responsibility. It's almost being neglectful not to help young people understand what the real world is that they're walking out into. That's a major 6-lane highway coming at them, and they better be ready for it.
Great. So I'm not going to go through all the findings. Again, they're in the article, but the one I want to focus on today, given our topic, is this. We looked at the comparison of first-generation college students versus continuing generation college students in the 12th grade, and we can see the gap here, right? So we all know that the gap exists, and intuitively, even before this research, we knew that the gap existed, and the general inference was that essentially first-generation students are disadvantaged in their college-going efforts because they didn't have access to parents who had that knowledge, right? Like, that's generally speaking, that's why first-generation students have been typically considered at risk in their transition from high school to college, right? So this codifies that, this provides evidence of that, and we can see across the board, it comes out to about a 15% difference. There were 76 items on the original version of the cake. That's the full version. 42 items were statistically supported. Again, long story short, 42 items evidenced good statistical reliability and validity in two subscales: the knowledge of college life subscale and the admissions procedures and financial aid subscale. So you can see students generally across the board, first gen and continuing gen, had much higher general knowledge of college life as compared to the admissions procedures and financial aid knowledge. But to step back for a second, while this looks good, right, and they had more knowledge of college life, the average score on this overall, as you can see for the 76 items, was a 51. That's a failing grade by most counts, right? So these were graduating high school students who graduated from high school with relatively little fact-based information as they were transitioning out of high school, and for most of them into a 2- or 4-year college environment. They made that decision with relatively little fact-based knowledge, right? So even this, so just again, long story short, the reason most of the items were not statistically supported is because not enough students knew the answers to them. So even though they weren't statistically supported, it doesn't mean that that knowledge is not worth having, essentially. But even among the statistically supported items, the average score was a 60 for the continuing gen students, and a 45, 46 for the first generation students. So again, a lot of decisions being made, life-changing decisions, life-altering decisions being made with relatively little fact-based information about how to go to college, or what college is like, or how to pay for college.
So Tim, would you agree then what we're saying is, like, this kind of knowledge and it is necessary for all students? In other words, because overall it was not good. It was shockingly low. And of your 42 items, how many did the first generation students score better than the people who had the non-first generation students?
not tracking what you mean by that second
In other
part.
words, were there any items where a first generation student actually scored higher? So my right, I
Oh,
think
no, there were no, it was across the board, every item. Right, now I see.
100% of those items, the regular non-first, I'm talking about people who've had people in their family go to college, they didn't do well, right? But then the first generation students, they did even worse. And there weren't any items that they even came close to. And I think I remember you analyzing the data and being shocked at how big the discrepancy was. I mean,
and it was universal. Like you do normally expect across 76 items, you would expect there to be some variability, and I was thinking that there had to be some items where the first gen students did better, but no, they literally did not do better on any single item. Yeah.
And when you look at that overall, obviously we know parents play a major, parents and guardians play a major role in students and their college going behaviors. As a school, like I think about, as a school counselor, on a Thursday night, I do a parent night, and I dump all the college knowledge, quote unquote, and who comes from 6 to 7, you run out the big cafeteria and you give the presentation and you look out, and I'll be honest, it was often the same parents, or it was so much information. If you were a first gen family, you probably half the stuff you don't even remember, and then as a counselor, I'm like, oh, well, I've done exactly what I'm supposed to do, but who showed up? Who came to that session, right? And did they understand the material? And I know we're going to talk about it more, but, looking at this data and looking at this information, Tim and Rich, like, what was sort of your reflection in how we can change that to make sure that we are addressing all students equally?
Yeah. It was really to be more systematic in how that information is shared, particularly in schools, because as we'll see on the next slide, this is a separate article, again, in the Professional School Counseling Journal, where we essentially found, looking at comparing the graduating high school students to the freshmen and sophomores, so that before the students were exposed to that formal college going curriculum, we see the gap increase over time. So I was looking at this to get back to answering your question. If schools are places where we can basically address the knowledge gap, the college knowledge gap in particular, schools should be places of equity and access, right? We hear that. But what this data is showing essentially is that those rich in college knowledge, relatively rich, got richer, while the first generation students, everybody benefited. So you see the lines are going up across the board from the 9th and 10th grade students to the 12th grade students. It seems like everybody's college knowledge was improving, but the continuing generation students actually had their college knowledge improve more. The gap widened instead of closed. So what we try to advocate for is having that gap close by targeting the students who need it the most. So Amanda, when I was a school counselor as well, I remember thinking at the parent events, like the ones who I needed to see the most were the ones who weren't there, right? So that's what we really need to focus on. And the best way to do that is by being systematic in the way that this information is shared. If you're working in a school where you're having different conversations with the college-bound students versus the non-college bound students, you're not helping close the gap. You're not helping close the gap. We have a lot of students, as we know, people's plans change, right? So we have to remember that these are 17 and 18-year-olds when they're graduating high school. And chances are really good that their plans are going to change. Just because somebody's saying that they don't want to go to college now doesn't mean that they never will. They need this knowledge. So making sure that you have access to a curriculum that provides students with college knowledge that's accessible to everybody is what I see as really important to solving this problem and working equitably, essentially.
Adding to what Tim's saying too, and to answer your question, Amanda, I believe I remember what we did was we looked at if you could have an increase of a half a standard deviation gain in college knowledge from where it was now. It was heartening to see how many young people would have fallen into a zone that we would have considered oh, they're kind of, it's like they're really kind of getting it. I mean, so I think, we can do this in a data-based measure, really valid measurement kind of way, but just raising that up a standard deviation kind of change and think about it. We figured out the numbers in that, and just to do that, was like, really, well, this is what you really could impact the whole school that way. And I do want to geek out about, and Tim went through it pretty quick, but the two factors, we did a lot of hardcore statistical analysis on that. And we did, what was the item response theory, IRT business?
Item response theory and then classical test theory were the two primary approaches. Yep.
And those were rock solid findings. So those two factors, the admissions procedures and financial aid on one side as a whole set of things, and over on this other side, it's knowledge of college life. So you can really keep those two things in mind as a way then of like speaking to parents and students about those two kind of themes that are so important.
Yeah, and just to finish geeking on it, the factors actually came from the exploratory and confirmatory factor analyses that we did as part of the study. So yes, that was a jam-packed article, and why we needed two, essentially. One to talk about the development process and the statistics that validate it, and the second one, this one, to talk about the actual findings and how that relates to practice. So
Amanda said we couldn't talk about the statistics though.
So what we've done now, to some free resources that we have through College Unmazed. So the cake, as you know, college knowledge, it's thankfully malleable, first of all, but second of all, it also is constantly changing. Like the college admissions landscape is constantly changing. So the best example that I have of this is that, about 2 years ago now, EFC, or expected family contribution, changed to the student aid index, or SAI, right? With some other slight differences there as well. So we need to update the assessment to reflect those kinds of changes. So the most updated version of the college admissions knowledge evaluation is actually here on College Unmazed in these college knowledge quizzes. So the college knowledge quiz focuses largely on the knowledge of college life, and the college decision-making quiz kind of focuses more on that second factor, the admissions procedures and financial aid question. So again, generally speaking, these are 48 items altogether, 23 on one, 25 on the other. The cool thing about these, they are free. So you find it on our website. This is a screenshot of the website. You'll find it on our website. If you can go directly to collegeunmazed.com/quiz, or if you just click on the free resources on the website, you'll see the college knowledge quizzes there. The cool thing about these quizzes, I won't go through them and live demonstrate them, but if you can put in your email address, the student can put in their email address, and it sends them a report telling them which ones they got right and wrong. So it's not just a measure of college knowledge. It's also a way to improve students' college knowledge, because it tells them which ones they got right and wrong, and then what the right answer is and why it's the right answer. So one thing I'll say is, if you do use this with students, every question has a not sure response option, and that's very intentional. So just encourage students, if they don't know the answer, instead of guessing, to just say not sure, just to make sure that they have essentially, and you have an accurate representation of what their college knowledge actually is. But the report, you can go through it as a counselor, and go through and test it out and see what you think before sharing it with students. Again, it is free, so encourage you to check it out.
And I'll say the college knowledge quiz really is the first one that's in orange, is really about kind of the 9th and 10th grade experience, and that's where a lot of students start. That's really about how you build your factors. There's 4 factors that we talk about within our curriculum: the U factor, academic, career, and money factor. And that's these beautiful mind maps. Is we went through all that college knowledge that is essential throughout that program, and really looked at, like Tim was saying, that it needs to be systematic, but it also needs to be that scaffolded information that all of a sudden, sometimes I know as a counselor, like I talked about money and scholarships way too late into the process. Like we need to let students know that actually college can be very affordable. The community college I worked at for years, we're talking there's less than $3,500 a year to attend, right? So where they're seeing $80,000, $90,000, that's really inaccurate. I mean, there's very affordable options. So there's some essential knowledge they need to have as early as freshman, sophomore year, so they can look at their academic plan. They can look at career opportunities and things that they want to do and explore that, how to build their college application and so forth. And so that first one assesses their 4 factors, which again, but I do believe still a junior and senior should still read this, but that's just kind of those building blocks that they need. And then the second quiz is going through our lead strategy. Tim, do you want to explain the lead strategy and what that entails?
Sure. The lead strategy just describes a process that students and families go through with first making a list of colleges, right? And then from that list, you explore those colleges a little bit more deeply to narrow the list a little bit further from all the possibilities. The A in leads is for apply, which is where you figure out which colleges to apply to. And then this gets into a lot of the nuts and bolts of the college application process, different kinds of admissions processes, what are all the documents, essay writing, etc. Different deadlines like early action versus early decision, etc. Then in the decide phase is when students have gotten back their acceptances. Then to make an informed decision, you go through and essentially evaluate things again. And then the final step is succeed, which initially we called it the lead strategy, and then we added the S a little bit later, kind of reflecting my own personal work as a school counselor. I think Amanda would agree too, is that didn't always do the best job of supporting students after they had made their decisions, like essentially after May 1st. Like there are other things that you can do to increase a student's chances of success in the transition, and in particular, avoiding summer melt. Your work's not done just when the applications and essays are done.
For sure. And I will say that all of these posters are under that free resources. So you can either download a JPEG of it, like a PNG or PDF. But we also do have the physical posters, and they're beautiful. I think, Tim, I see you have some of the background. It's a little blurred, but they're 18 by 24. And so you can always, again, request those at info@collegeonmaze.com, and we're happy to send those out, because again, this knowledge is so critical in closing this knowledge gap that all students should have, whether they are going to be going on to college or not. They still need to understand this process. And I think, Rich, you would agree, this lead strategy, even if you're going into the military, even if you're going into a 2-year program, it's still the same decision-making process. You got to build your list of options. You got to explore those options. What do you have to do to make sure that happens? You got to apply. What about making a decision, succeeding? So again, all students will benefit from going through this lead strategy, whether they go to a 4-year university or not. Rich, do you want to add to that? Because I know that's a big thing that you love to talk about.
You said it really, really well. For me, if I draw your attention to decide, the informed decision, you see create, evaluate, analyze, apply, understand, and remember. So that's a higher order thinking process. And so what we're hoping is young people would take information, and then what they would do with it is they would go in the decide phase. They'd be at the point to really, it would give them the opportunity. Every student who would go through this would have an experience with a higher order thinking experience to kind of come out to make an informed decision. And as we've been trying to say, these are all malleable things. These aren't fixed things like when a young person might say, oh, I'm not good at math, and attribute it to a cause that they can't do anything about. These are all things that can become part of that self-directed, purposeful kinds of behavior that's so important. And I couldn't agree more. Helping young people make good decisions. This is the fundamental to regardless of whatever it is that you're going to do.
And even with our curriculum, I think that's a good point. We even have other things besides leads. Like we teach something about the 6 keys of college fit, which is so critical. Tim just had a daughter go through the process. I've had a daughter go through the process. Rich just had several daughters go through the process. Our whole curriculum, besides looking at college knowledge, is how do we teach it? How do we get students and families to integrate it and use it as they go through the process? So like the 6 keys, as they go through every step of the process, they're reanalyzing it as they learn new information. And so it's really important. We have something called the 3x3 decision-making chart. So there's lots of other things that I know, this poster doesn't encapsulate, but it's really about how do we teach students to, again, have that essential college knowledge, but then also how to make an informed college life decision is so critical. So, so yeah, great opportunity.
We'll
All
cover
right.
it. No,
Yeah, we got lots more coming. We could talk about this all day long if you let us. So yeah, connect with us, collegeonmaze.com. We have tons of resources, free downloads all the time. We have a blog that we like to send out often. Rich loves to write, so he's got some great good news things coming out as well. But you can always email us, whether you are looking for links to the research article or you have other questions. All of our emails, Sturk is mine, Rich is R. LePan, and then we have Tim Poynton at collegeonmaze.com. But we are here if you have any questions or kind of want to see what the curriculum looks like, sort of in action. Would love to kind of show you and have more conversations. But thank you so much for all staying on and having this conversation. Again, feel free to email us at any time. This is the stuff that we love to do. This is our work right here. And anything that we can do to help your program be successful and thus your students be successful is really critical. Anything else, Tim and Rich, before we head out?
No, thanks.
Thanks. Look forward to talking again in the future.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.